10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 238. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 238 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Great to be here with you all, and thanks so much for tuning in once again. This week we are going to wrap up our series on composing and getting you to sit down and do this important thing when it comes to being a jazz musician. Most jazz musicians are composers, and we don't want you to be any different. And what I'm hoping is that this series just really helped you with getting going. If composing is something that has been a little bit intimidating to you or you're not sure where to start, that's really what this month has focused around. So before we jump into the episode, I've got a bunch of brand new patrons to thank. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, we are a listener-supported podcast. That means that you provide us through your monthly donations on Patreon a way to keep this podcast coming out in high quality each and every week. So if you'd like to get signed up, you do get a PDF along with every single episode. And on our $5 tier, you actually get a PDF and audio examples taken straight from the episode, all kinds of backing tracks and goodies to help you practice the material that you're listening to on the show every week. So let me first thank the brand new patrons. We've got two new $3 patrons. Thank you to Mark and thank you to Nick. Great name, Nick. And we've got two $5 patrons. Thank you to Carl and thank you to Martin. I also want to thank a couple of people who have gone in and edited their pledges up to that $5 level so that they can get access to all those audio examples. So thank you to Eva, Harry, and Bob for editing your pledges up to $5. And for all you $3 patrons out there, you can do that. So if you'd like to get signed up, head over to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today, and you get instant access to all 238 episodes and all the materials that go along with those. All right, so let's jump into today's episode. So what I did to kind of go along with our Tune of the Month episode, which is usually what takes place in this last episode of the month, is I actually wrote a melody to the chord progression that I wrote in last episode, and I wrote an etude to that chord progression. So that's how we're kind of covering the Tune of the Month thing. I want to make sure that you guys get a brand new etude every single month. So that's what we've done. But what I wanted to do sort of for the meat of this podcast was just talk a little bit more about composition and kind of wrap up our thoughts on what you can be doing and how you can carry these lessons into the future. So first, I want to talk about the melody that I've written over the tune. So an important thing that we didn't really discuss last week was tempo plays a big role in your compositions. So what you want to do is you want to sort of have a tempo in mind and then kind of write to that tempo. So this is a perfect example of what I've done here. I decided on this chord progression that I wrote that I wanted it to be about the most medium swing tempo that could possibly be. So I put it at 100 BPM. Now, once I made that decision, I decided to write an appropriate melody that I thought would sound good at that tempo. So before we listen to the melody that I've written, I want to mention that I wrote it with that tempo in mind. And if I was doing it a lot slower or a lot faster, I probably would have written something completely different. So that's something as you're getting into this composition routine and you're starting to do more and more of it, that's something I absolutely want you to think about. I want you to think about how this is going to come across at the tempo you've decided on. So when I think about a swing tune at 100 BPM, I think about that as a semi-lazy kind of walking tempo. So I kind of wanted my melody to be kind of lazy sounding, easy, very easy to listen to, not hard on the ears, and just kind of plodding along from the beginning to the end. All of the great tunes that I know right around this tempo, kind of have that vibe to them. So that is what I decided on when I wrote my melody. Now, the other thing that I just wanted to touch on before I actually play what I came up with for you is I always like for there to be some kind of theme to my melody because otherwise it kind of just sounds like a solo that I ended up writing down on paper. And what you're going to notice in this melody is there is a theme. It's not a very intrusive theme, meaning that I didn't use it in every single measure. I didn't sort of hammer it over the head or hammer you over the head with it, but it is in there. And I'll be really interested to see if when you study my melody, if you'll be able to pick up on just this simple little thing that I stuck in there on multiple different occasions as I went through the melody. Now, I also wanted to talk about how I wrote the melody. Like, how did I approach writing a melody over these chord changes? And I'll just give you a little snapshot into my process. Your process could be different, but I think some people, or I've had students ask me that. Like, well, do you just start writing things down on the paper and see if you like the way that they sound? Or do you get out the horn and play some stuff first and then write it down? How do you approach that? So I just wanted to sort of let you know my process. The very first thing I did was I sat down at the piano and I played this chord progression maybe a dozen times because the first thing I want to do is I really want to get the harmony into my ears before I even attempt to write a melody. I want to sort of get that chord progression stuck in my head so that I can walk around with it running through my head and maybe come up with some cool melody ideas. And then the way that I always approach writing a melody is I don't write things down on paper first. And I actually don't even write on the saxophone because my fear of writing on the saxophone is that I'm going to actually do things because they're easy or familiar on the instrument. And I don't want my melodies to be reflective of what I can play on the instrument because then I'm going to fall into all kinds of different traps. So what I actually do is I'll sing melodies over the top of the chord progression. While I'm playing piano, I'll just sing what comes to mind, what comes naturally to my ears. And then if I like that, I'll commit it to paper. If I don't like it, I'll go back to the beginning of the progression and start singing again. But I think this is really important, and I think a lot of you might find this really useful. Sing your melodies, write your melodies with your voice instead of on your instrument. Because what you might not realize is that you're actually limited by your instrument, or your instrument exerts a lot of influence on what you're going to write. Whereas your voice is kind of just free to do its own thing, and you may come up with the most melodic thing when you're singing, as opposed to when you're sitting there with your instrument. So those are just some thoughts I had. I was trying to sort of write down some of the things that I was doing and thinking about when I actually wrote the melody to this tune. And I want to try to convey those to you as some final thoughts on composing. So now let's jump into the tune. So what I've done is, as you remember from last week, I've written a 16 measure chord progression. So I wrote a 16 measure melody, and you'll hear me actually play that melody twice. So start thinking about that theme material that I was talking about. Does anything pop out at you as happening more often? And I'm actually not sure at this tempo if I would in real life actually play the melody twice. That would be a decision that I would have to make after sitting with the tune for a little bit longer. But I played it twice here just so you could hear that melody again. And then I wrote 2 choruses of Etude. So after the first 32 bars, you're going to hear 32 bars of the Etude that you're going to get this week. So let's check out the recording of this tune. Hope you like it. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got something out of this episode. And most of all, I hope that you're actually doing these exercises. I've seen a lot of posts in the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group, and your compositions have been awesome. You've been doing the exercises, you've been really trying to get on top of this aspect of being a musician, and I really, really appreciate that. So anybody who's nervous to jump in and share their compositions, please do in that Facebook group. That's a really, really supportive environment, and everybody is kind of in it together and practicing a lot of the same things. So if you're looking for, especially in this time of distancing here, if you're looking for kind of a community to rally around, that is a great one. There's just so many fantastic people that hang out in that group. So I encourage you to do that. All right. Hope you enjoyed this month's series. I know I had a blast putting it together, and hey, I got a new tune out of it. I think I will actually play this tune. I may go back and make a bunch of tweaks to it and turn it into something that I feel like I can live with forever. But this has been great for me as well. It's kind of forced me back into the realm of composition, which I don't always do every day. So thanks for doing that for me, and I hope you guys get something out of this too. Remember, if you want to get the lead sheet and the etude, go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today for that small monthly donation, and you'll get access to this and 237 other episodes of material. Hope you guys are doing well out there, staying safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.